Live from the bridge at the Launchpad Studios in Huntington, New York, it's Sports Talk New York with your hosts, Mark Rosenman and AJ Carter. Sports Talk New York is sponsored in part by Cardboard Memories, Clearview, Long Island, the law firm of Decolator, Cohen, and DePrisco, the Phoenix Tube Company, PIMS Incorporated, fueling brand performance for 30 years, Prince Associates for all your insurance needs, and Soho Table Hockey. Here are your hosts, Mark and AJ.
And good Sunday evening to you. Mark Roseman, AJ Carter with you live from the Launchpad in Huntington. It's a beautiful...
We're ready to launch.
Beautiful day in New York, for sure.
Not so good if you're in Miami.
No, unless you're the Marlins.
New York team.
Unless you're the Marlins. By the way, kudos to the Marlins with those jerseys. Those jerseys were outrageous.
They were
I
nice.
love them.
And by the way, Mark, I know you've been following the golf. It's been exciting with, Phil Mickelson may win a major again at the age of 50. It's a good story. I know you don't like golf.
Well,
but for those who follow golf,
I don't know
it's
if
been
he's
a
going
very
to win
good
it
story.
because I know that last hole with that little windmill that you have to get it through.
No, he'll get it through the clown's mouth and that'll be fine.
Yeah, you think so? All right.
Yeah.
All right, it's time now for the Major League Baseball Report with John Coppinger. It's sponsored by Cardboard Memories, which is one of Long Island's most reputable memorabilia retail stores for over 29 years. The owner of Cardboard Memories, Scott Stamell, is known for his knowledge and savvy of authentic autographs. He's been featured on HBO's Real Sports with Brian Gumbel. Cardboard Memories possesses the honesty and integrity one would want and need from a memorabilia source. Cardboard Memories is always buying collections, large and small. Let Cardboard Memories run your next charity fundraising auction. Call them to find out how they can help your organization at no cost whatsoever. Cardboard Memories is located at 6401 Jericho Turnpike, Comac, New York. Visit them on the web at cardboardmemories.com or follow them on Facebook or Instagram. So, I don't know if you noticed this, John, but SNY has a new open. Instead of playing Meet the Mets, they have a new theme song, and we'll just play a little bit of it for you here. So I'm sure you recognize that. That is the theme to MASH.
Whose name, of course, is Suicide is Painless.
Right, exactly.
So remember that as we continue talking about the Mets.
So the Mets do look like a MASH unit, and they resemble, I can't even say a AAA roster. Their outfield, listen, it is fun to watch in some respects, but it's also painful to watch. Maybe I know now what a masochist feels like because you watch it. It is entertaining, but it is painful. So, first of all, again, it's very difficult to judge Luis Rojas because let's face it.
No, you can't. You can't.
Last year, how can you judge that? And now this year, listen, my friend has been apoplectic over the fact that Cameron Maybin is batting third. Finally, he was dropped a little bit today.
Today it was James McCann who was just, and he got a hit.
Right. But what can you do with this lineup? What are the different permutations? Listen, analytics aside, how do you even analyze this lineup?
I don't know if you do. I mean, listen, who else are you going to bat third? You want to put Dom Smith up there? Okay, then you got 4 through 9. You've got a bunch of replacements and guys that aren't hitting. So I don't know what you do. You know how you judge the lineup? You get happy because at least your outfield defense is supreme.
Yeah, really
with Vargas and Lee, and they're taking away enough runs. But they have to hit. And listen, these guys are going to come back slowly but surely. None of these injuries are major. They're nagging. They're annoying. J.D. Davis got pulled from the lineup today because of a stiff neck, so he's dealing with another one. So, but the depth is being tested, and through it all, the Mets are in first place, and they've got the widest margin going into today, the widest margin of any division leader. So go figure that one out.
Here's the thing that's really starting to bother about the Mets. It's not the less than minor leaguers they're putting out in the field. It's what's happening with their pitching. So DeGrom goes down with a pain in his side. Taijuan Walker goes out, pitches well. He's out with a pain in his side on the IL. Now they put Jordan Yamamoto out there, and they pull him after 5 innings today? Because he has a pain in his side. What is going on here? What are they doing? Is that Jeremy Hefner? Is it the mechanics he's having the pitchers do? What is going on that the pitchers all seem to be suffering the same injury?
It's a great question, but I'll also say that these kind of injuries, these soft tissue injuries, these lat injuries, it isn't just a Mets problem. This is a baseball problem. You have pitchers and position players that went from a 60-game season to ramping up to a 162-game season. Right. Baseball players are creatures of habit, and when that habit is destroyed, then there are consequences. And I think what you're seeing across baseball are those consequences.
And the other thing is also, we don't really know what usually transpires in an offseason. A lot of times these guys go to different gyms to work out, or they work with personal trainers. During COVID, a lot of them probably weren't going to the similar places that they were. Maybe some of them were working out at home in their own personal gyms. They weren't doing the things they normally do, without question. Regardless of how they worked out, it wasn't the same routine. So, and this is, you're right, it's across all Major League Baseball. But it's the other things. It's the little nagging things, like all of a sudden Nimmo with the nerve damage. Then you got J.D. Davis with a neck sprain. Every single injury, no one has come back in the initial timetable that they've ever set.
The only two that you write off because they are game happenings, Albert Almora and Kevin Pillar. Right. Those are the only two you can say, wow, there's nothing you could do to prevent that other than not catch the balls, and you don't want them to do it,
not stick your face in front of a
fastball, not going to home plate. But you look at all the other injuries, and they concern me at least over as a sign of something. Oh, is every other team happening that? I don't know. My fantasy team, I hate to use a comparison to that. I'm starting to get everybody on the IL. My fantasy team's like the Mets. So, and
the one guy who I'm surprised.
But that should be your proof that it is across baseball.
Yeah, exactly. that is what I was leading.
And the one thing that the trainer has to be given credit for is the fact that Gary DiSarcina does not have a dislocated shoulder. I mean, this guy just waves everyone around the third. he waves the wrong guys around.
When they get to third.
Right.
When they get to third. That's the issue. So let's talk Yankees for a second, John. Let's talk about Corey Kluber's no-hitter. And
a triple play.
And the triple play. Well, let's talk no-hitter for a second. There's a whole debate that followed after that over whether no-hitters are cheaper now, because it came a day after another no-hitter. There are 7 so far this year, 8 if you count Bumgarner. Are no-hitters worth less now than they used to be?
No, I don't think they're worth less. I don't think they're bad for baseball. I do think that they're a product of the overcorrection of trying to get rid of the home runs and get rid of the 3 true outcomes. They've tried to bring a little more contact in the game by deadening the ball. But what's happened is there are more movement on these baseballs now. So pitchers are all of a sudden getting these wild swings and misses instead of getting clocked for home runs. So it's gone too much the other way. No hitters are entertaining. I still think that they're good for the game. But I think there has to be another way now. And baseball's going to go back to the drawing board and try to correct and not overcorrect.
Well, it's interesting. Steve Gelbs had a great report. I might have been 2 days ago about why the pitchers and why strikeouts are such on the rise and why the pitchers are so ahead of the batters. And he kind of said all this technology is more suited to the pitchers. You can go and use the Raposo machine. You can look at different various rates of spin, and you can analyze everything to get a bigger break on your ball, different grips, and you can really analyze it. Where on the other end, baseball went to this launch angle. It takes, they said, about 1 to 200 at bats for you to kick in any slight change you make in your at bat. Where pitching, you can go out there and you can master, based on all this different technology, different grips and different bullpen sessions. So that's another thing. When these batters start catching up, we'll see a correction.
If though, that's the problem. Right. If this has been a trend that's going on for a number of years.
Well, you talk about all the adjustments that the pitchers have made and all this new information. It goes back to what Pete Rose once said many years ago, that if pitchers were smart, I'd never get a hit. Pitchers are smart now.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's take a look at one other story that's been making headlines in baseball. That's Tony La Russa and the fact that he is getting absolutely trashed by some of his own players. Listen, he's an old school manager. And to him, a 3-0 count when you're crushing the opponent and the opponent doesn't have a pitcher on a real pitcher on the mound, you gave the batter the take sign. The batter is looking, to pad his stats, hit a home run. Their feeling is the game's not out of reach. No game is ever out of reach. But he swung on a 3-0 pitch, hit a home run. Larussa chastised him in the postgame. The next day, the batter was thrown at, and Larussa says, I have no problem with them throwing at him. They should have. His team, took to Twitter and said the game wasn't over. Shame on them if they don't have enough pitching. What's your feeling on it?
Well, not only his own players went to Twitter, but a lot of players and a lot of other teams basically said, look, when you put a pitcher in the game, all of these bets, all of these unwritten rules, they're out the window. And I think the problem is that Larussa really hasn't adjusted to how today's players feel about that, how they feel about unwritten rules. But my biggest problem with this whole thing with Tony Larussa, because you can discuss about unwritten rules and whatnot. I think that a lot of unwritten rules are silly, including swinging at 3-0 pitches. I think the problem is that if you're going to handle something like that in-house, then handle it in-house. Don't go chastising your own player, to the media, and then say, well, we're going to handle it in-house. Because that's not exactly handling it in-house. When you don't back, you could squash it to bed by not saying anything about it, then take your player aside in-house and explain to him why that's not a good idea and support your player.
There's no such thing in-house now. Somebody's going to find out, somebody's going to tweet it. I want to make another point, though. The situation that prompted this is one of these blowout games. And if you remember last year, when they were talking about all of the possible changes in the game because of COVID and the shortened schedules, they talked about a mercy rule. And, which is they have in Little League, and I think they even have in the high school. They have in high school and softball. And is it time for baseball to have, whether it's 15 runs or 12 runs, to have some sort of a mercy rule? When the answer to that is having a position player throw 45 miles an hour.
I understand that thinking. But you know what? I've always been a proponent of the fact that baseball doesn't do enough for the fans. If you're going to tell a fan that spent $100, $150, $200 a ticket that you might only see 5 innings of baseball because of a mercy rule, how is that going to go over with these fans?
The counter argument is by the time it gets to enough runs to invoke the mercy rule, nobody's in the stands anyway. They've gone home.
Not if you're the home team that's got 15 runs. And you know what? You can, as long as Wrigley Field and the wind blowing out exists, you can never have a mercy rule in baseball. Right. It just never happened. So, all right, Johnny, we will, we'll speak to you in 2 weeks. Obviously, next week, Memorial Day weekend, we will be running a best of. We'll speak to you in 2 weeks. John Coppinger here each and every week with the Major League Baseball Report. AJ and I thought long and hard about different guests this week, and we felt with the no hitters that are just ramping up. We did a spot 5 years ago before we were on the 365 Sportscast Network that we think is really timely today. And it was 69 years ago, and so many people don't know anything about this. When we come back, we'll tell you a little bit more about Ron Necciai, and then we'll play that interview. So keep it tuned right here to Sports Talk New York on the 365 Sportscast Network.
Do you own a business? When is the last time you actually had a visit from or even spoke with your insurance representative? Did your current insurance agency sell to another firm or maybe merge, leaving you without the attention you deserve? Prince Associates is a provider of commercial insurance nationwide and represents some of the finest insurance carriers in the industry. Prince Associates has been representing commercial clients since 1965, and we continue to grow and offer our personal services in a competitive and ever-changing market. If you want back the insurance relationship you deserve, reach out to us, 516-822-6550. That's area code 516-822-6550. And ask for Leith or Craig, or find us on the web at www.princeins.com.
And welcome back to Sports Talk New York on the 365 Sportscast Network. Keep it tuned here after us. Obviously, BT Talks Baseball. Our good friend Howie Carpin joins him. And then after that, Interlocking NY is always a great show. Then a replay of Colin Cosell's The Sport of Entertainment. And then Sarcastic Remarks closes out the evening before Buried Treasure. So keep it tuned here all night on your iPhone, on your Android, on your Alexa app, or just on your plain old computer. Get off the porn and watch us or listen to us. All right, so this is a very, very cool interview. And, we haven't replayed this much at all. And it's so funny because
we never replayed this before at all.
No, I don't think so.
And
it's very interesting because, like, when I tell people, do you know that there was a guy who pitched a no-hitter in professional baseball, but also struck out all 27 batters, recorded the outs, 27 outs by strikeout? And they go, oh, come on. So, Mike had that reaction. Mike Capisa brought up, and then Brett, who's in the studio, he goes, oh, come on.
And Brett, who knows baseball inside
right?
out. Yeah.
But this is a story. Nickname was Rocket Ron, and this was an interview we did with him 5 years ago, which was and the anniversary just happened this week. I think it was May 16th, I believe, is the date that he set the record. But this is Ron Necciai from 5 years ago. We hope you enjoyed this interview.
Joining us now is a man who 64 years ago this past Friday stepped into baseball history while pitching for the Bristol, Virginia Twins in the Class D Appalachian League, when he became the only pitcher in professional baseball history to strike out 27 batters. Yes, you heard me correct. 27 batters in one 9-inning game. He did it against the Welch West Virginia Miners at Bristol Shaw Stadium. Never before nor since has any pitcher in major or minor league struck out 27 batters over the course of 9 innings.
Because he came close the next game.
Yes, he did. It is a pleasure to welcome the only man to have accomplished that feat, Rocket Ron Necciai. Welcome, Ron. How you doing?
Very well, thank you.
You look at it, you're signed by the Pittsburgh Pirates as an amateur free agent. You make your way up the Pirates minor league system with stops in Shelby, Salisbury, and New Orleans. And in 1952, at the age of 19, you find yourself a member of the Bristol Twins, a Class D affiliate of the Pirates. In fact, a severe attack of stomach ulcers while you were at spring training in California with the Pirates was the only reason why you were in the minors at all. You had a very special relationship with the manager, George DeTore, a former big league infielder and the Bristol manager. You were still learning to pitch at that point, and there's a story out there that when you were in high school, one of your fastballs actually broke a batter's ribs, and that you played mostly first base from then on until DeTore put you back on the mound as a pro. So what did George mean to you as a manager, as a mentor, and as your development for a pitcher?
Well, really, George meant everything to me, because when I started, supposedly to go play professional baseball, I thought I was going to be a first baseman. And they sent me to a place called Salisbury where George was the manager. And after a couple of days, he said, you're never going to be able to run fast enough and you can't handle the curveballs, but you're going to be a pitcher. And I looked at him, and I can remember telling him, I said, but I'm not a pitcher, I'm a first baseman. He said, no, you're going to be a pitcher. So from then on, it was, I didn't know how to throw a curveball. I didn't know how to throw a change, but I could throw it pretty hard, I guess. And there spent lots and lots and lots of time with George, learning to try and throw the ball. Control was always a problem. But George is the one that decided I was going to be the pitcher, and I thought he was going to be a drugstore Indian. But
you're invited to the Major League Spring Training Camp in San Bernardino, California, in 1952. You pitched 5 shutout innings against the defending National League champion Giants. Branch Rickey and the general manager and the manager Billy Meyer planned to have you start the season at the big league roster, but you had some health issues that prevented you from starting the season in the majors. How disappointing was that for you?
Well, like everybody else, when you're young, you don't think you get sick and stay sick very long. But we were on our way back from spring training, and we got to New Orleans. I started to spit up blood and what have you, and found out it was ulcers, which that's how I wound up in Bristol. Ultimately, they sent me back to Pittsburgh to the doctors, and I'd lost weight, and I was pretty skinny to begin with. And anyhow, after doing all the hospital visits in Pittsburgh with the club doctor, went back, and Mr. Rickey said, well, now you got to get yourself in physical shape, and you're going to have to work your way back up here. And that was fine with me, because I loved Mr. Rickey. He was fantastic with me. And he said, you're going to have to go someplace, son. Where would you like to go? And I didn't know where Bristol was any more than anything. And I just said to him, where's George DeTore? He said, he's in a place called Bristol. And I said, fine, I'd like to go there. And that's really how I wound up in Bristol.
It's funny because you go back there to get yourself back in shape, and prior to maybe the single greatest pitching performance ever, this is what transpired. Opening night before 2,400 at Shaw Stadium, you struck out 20 Kingsport Cherokees, and in your next start against the Pulaski Phillies, you struck out 19 batters in back-to-back games. Then in a relief appearance against Johnson City, a game in which you came in the 7th inning with the bases loaded, nobody out, you strike out the side, and then the next 8 batters in succession, setting the minor league record of 11 in a row. You're 19 years old at that point. Were you surprised at how successful you were, especially since you thought of yourself as a first baseman? Here you're just striking. No one's touching anything that you throw. Were you surprised at the level of success that you were meeting with at that age?
Well, I don't know. You don't really pay attention to that. That's a long, long time ago. But when you're down there, you have a reason for being there and something you're supposed to be doing so that you can get back to a higher class. And I was there with specific orders on what I was to do, and as far as health and pitches and what have you, and spent a lot of time. Harry Dunlop was in conjunction. He was a catcher. They knew what things to call and when, and I was really there. I guess today you'd call it a rehab assignment, and that was the whole thing, was to be able to get strong enough to throw and rein in the control. I always had a tendency to throw a lot of strikes. I was fine, and then I could have everybody walking around, including the people in the stands.
So how much did the ulcer affect your pitching, and how?
Well, you'd get stomach pains, nauseous, and kind of gnawing stomach pains constantly. And in those days, they didn't know modern medicine wasn't around in 1952. Now they give you pills and things, and they cure it. Then they thought it was what you were eating, not what was eating you. Right. And anyhow, I took tablets, and I ate between innings and all the time, constantly, cottage cheese and Melba toast and things like that today they laugh at. But that was a prescribed problem then.
I mean, I know I had a bleeding ulcer about 3.5 years ago, and I finally passed out, so I ended up in the hospital, and they actually cauterized it, which is how they stopped the bleeding. But I guess they didn't have treatments like that back in those days.
No, and you've never struck out anybody. So, here's the interesting thing, though. AJ and I love the minor leagues, and we've talked about it, and there are just so many cities that minor league baseball meant everything to. You pitched down in Bristol, and it's one of those areas that no longer has minor league baseball. Shaw Stadium, take us back 64 years ago to what the Bristol Twins meant to that area and what Shaw Stadium was like.
Well, actually, Bristol does have minor league baseball now, but they have short seasons.
Right.
The June, July, and August.
Right.
It's no longer a
full season, right?
Season like we did then. I guess they call it a rookie league. It's
right.
Whatever. But it was a great town to be in. I still am friends with the widow of the fellow, the Loretta Trayer, that her husband Jack run the restaurant where all the ball players ate, and we were making tremendous salaries, $150 a month in those days. And half the time we ate in his restaurant, their Trayers, and he didn't charge us. We were kids, didn't have any money. And it was a great town. I still get back there occasionally. They built a monument to me there a couple of years ago, and went back for that and other things.
So May 13th, 1952, home game against the Boston Braves D-League team, the Welch Miners. You were actually not feeling well that day and almost didn't make the start, right?
Correct. I was having stomach pains, and you know what stomach pangs are. It's like you're hungry, but it's a gnawing constant. And I used to drink a lot of milk and Melba toast and things like that. And sometimes it worked, but I didn't want to miss my turn and whatever. And I talked to George, and I've talked to Harry Dunlop, who was a catcher who's still alive, and we talk occasionally. And just decided I'd go as long as I could and get out of there.
And it's interesting to note that as the game wore on and strikeouts started to mount, your stomach began to act up. And the story goes that at one point that you were throwing up in the dugout, and at another point, the manager actually sent the bat boy out to the mound with 2 pills and a glass of milk. And the game was halted while that happened. Do you remember any of that?
Yes, that's true. They used to give you little black pills that was supposedly to help your stomach, and the milk was to calm your stomach, and they were little banthine pills or something they called them. That was what medical prescription was in those days, and he did, but I didn't want to give up, and so George said, go ahead, just go when you're done, just tell me, and we'll stick Frank Ramsey in there. But anyhow, it passed, and it goes, apparently left, and I hung around till the end.
It's also reported that in the ninth inning, that the leadoff batter, who was pinch hitter Frank Whitehead, lifted a pop foul between home and first, and the catcher, who's going after it, your first baseman was yelling to him, drop it, drop it. At that point, were you aware of how many strikeouts you had in the game? And were you aware that what you were doing had never been done before?
No, you don't keep track of everybody that you strike out. Remember, there was a guy hitting an error and a walk. And as far as that goes, Harry Dunlop and I have discussed this for 62 years, and nobody seems to remember the foul ball that the first baseman remembers. There was that never happened. And the truth of the matter was, I have strange joints in my elbows, and I could not learn to throw a curveball like normal people throw curveballs. So I had to throw it overhand, like they call it a drop. Today they call them drops or something. It would go out and straight down, and a lot of pitches didn't reach home plate. They look like fastballs, but then they break into the dirt. And the ball for the third strike that got away was a curveball in the dirt. It got past Harry Dunlop. That's how the third strike got in. I don't remember. Joe Novotniak was alive, and Bob Crisley is alive to this day. That played in the game, and we've talked about it several times. And he said, "I don't ever remember anything like that. I don't know where he got that. Dunlop doesn't, Crisley doesn't, and Novotniak doesn't."
That's so funny.
You also don't remember during the game you had a no-hitter going, did you?
No. Once a ball game starts, I don't think you pay attention. And this is not where people are screaming. I don't know how many people are in the stands or something like that. I really wasn't paying attention. I was just trying to get them out and get myself in shape and go, because I knew I was going to leave there shortly and go to a place called Burlington, North Carolina, and stay there for about a month or so. And then Mr. Rickey told me I'd come to Pittsburgh. So that's all I had on my mind, was getting ready, paying attention to George Detour and Harry Dunlop, and getting going. When you get down here, you get a little hungry.
What's interesting now, because every single level of professional sports in all the major sports are covered by so much media. You finish this game, a no-hitter in which you strike out 27 batters. You go into a locker room, and there's no reporter to ask you any questions. The reporter that was there goes and files a story about this game, which is to this day the most incredibly pitched game in the history of baseball. What's the atmosphere in the locker room after that? Are people congratulating you? Is anyone aware of what just transpired?
This we've discussed a million times too. I remember going into the locker room like the guys did, and Harry Dunlop and George Detour were standing there. And when I got in, and they come over to me and said, "Do you realize what you did?" And I said, "No, what? I usually hit somebody and hurt someone or knock them down, but it didn't happen that night." And anyhow, they said, "You struck out 27 guys." In a smart, what, I still remember to this day saying, "So what? They've been playing this game for 100 years. Somebody did it before." And really, it was the next day when we found out that nobody had.
It's truly amazing. What, looking back at it, and obviously you talked to you guys that have played in that game, and you've talked about it over these 62 years. What is your favorite part of that game? What's the thing that you remember most? Actually, 64 years. What's the most vivid memory of that game or the post game? What do you take away from that moment?
I remember going into the locker room when George and Harry said, "Do you realize what you did?" And I said, in a smart aleck remark, a cocky young kid, and he just said, "So what? They've been playing this game for 100 years. And somebody else has done it before." And really, I don't remember. Never did remember. 30 years ago. I didn't remember anything different.
So the other thing that happened this past week was Max Scherzer tied the major league record with 20 strikeouts.
Mhm.
It was like the fourth time that was done.
Yes.
So
Twice
Mhm.
by Clemens.
Twice by Clemens.
First
When
time.
you see something like that happen, realizing what happened to you, how the injuries shortened your career, when you see something like that, you say, "Gee, I wish that could have been me," or "I think that could have been me."
No, I've never ever looked back and said it would have been, it could have been, it should have been. I hung around. Mr. Ricky paid me for a couple of years while they sent me to Duke University and the University of California, and finally Johns Hopkins to figure out what was. I wound up with rotator cuff, and in those days they didn't know anything, didn't even know what a rotator cuff was. And finally, after this, back in those days, the big guru for the pitchers was a Dr. Bennett at Johns Hopkins. And after I got down here and made the rounds of other hospitals, and he told me what he figured it was, and I said, "Fine, we'll fix it." He said, "No, we don't know how. We can't do anything, and we'll fix it, and we'll pin it back, and it'll just tear in about 6 months, and you'll be right where you are." And I still can remember his words, and he said, "Son, go home and buy a gas station. You're not going to pitch again."
Which is a shame, because you look at your numbers at Bristol that season, the 6 games. I mean, when you read this, it just boggles the mind. 6 games, you struck out 109 batters in 42 2/3 innings. That's almost 23 per 9 innings. No pitcher has ever come close at any level of professional ball. You had a 0.42 ERA. That does get you a call to the majors on a team that had Joe Graggiola and Ralph Kiner. What's your fondest memories of your 12 games in the majors?
Well, let's see. My fondest memory of the 12 games. I won one. And they were all pretty much the same. On the days where I could throw strikes, I was fine. We'd lose. I lost 2-1 in Cincinnati, 4-3, and one against Boston. But on the days when I couldn't throw strikes, and that was half the time, then I got in deep trouble. You put 3 guys on and you go to groove one, or you try to throw a strike and you take something off of it, and those guys in those days didn't miss them, and so you get whacked. And we didn't have a real good team, and I contributed to Pirates being not real good in 52. So,
Ron, thank you so much for allowing us to relive one of professional baseball's greatest games with obviously the man who did it, the most amazing, as far as I'm concerned, pitched game in baseball history.
I'll tell you, though, you did ask me about one of the fondest things in Pittsburgh was getting to room with Joe Garagiola and getting to know Joe, and he was just one fantastic man and still is. And thanks for calling, and see what I know.
Our pleasure. Thanks so much, Ron.
You're welcome.
Ron Necciai, the man who struck out 27 batters in one game.
The Phoenix Tube Company Incorporated is among the country's leading manufacturers of structural ornamental stainless steel tubing, rectangles, squares, and processed flat bars. The company takes pride in its everyday commitment to quality and customer service. The philosophy of the company has been and continues to be to support the growth of the stainless tube market through distribution and service centers throughout the country. Ornamental and structural stainless steel tubing is used for a wide variety of aesthetic and mechanical products where superior finish and corrosion resistance are required. Some products manufactured include tubing for mirror bracket arms, boat rails and ladders, washroom grab bars, swimming pool rail products, medical equipment, automotive step bars and trimming, as well as structural framing for food processing equipment. For a quote or for more information on how the Phoenix Tube Company can meet your ornamental and structural stainless steel tubing needs, visit them on the web at phoenixtube.com or call them toll-free at 1-800-526-2124.
And welcome back to Sports Talk New York on the 365 Sportscast Network. It's time for the NHL Report with Russ Cohn. It's sponsored by our friends over at Soho Table Hockey. What's table hockey, you ask, AJ?
What's table hockey, Mark?
Some of us might have grown up with the rod hockey or bubble hockey or even air hockey tables. Soho Table Hockey has embraced the nostalgia of those old tabletop games and designed a whole new board for the future. Handcrafted with designer wood, state-of-the-art playing surface, unbendable rods, energy-absorbing walls. This is a table hockey game that players age 8 to AJ's age can enjoy. Even better, the exceptional quality and design allows the game to stand up to the intensity of tournaments, which is why Soho Table Hockey is the #1 choice of championship players throughout North America. Visit SohoTableHockey.com to learn more. Start your order on a custom game. You can choose your wood, a center ice logo, and even the team matchups. Go ahead, drop the puck. You'll love Soho Table Hockey so much you won't be able to stop playing.
So Mark,
if you're
let me
Barry
ask you a question.
Trotz,
Before we get to Russ, did you ever play the table hockey game? Did you ever play penalties and took players off?
No, but that's the
We used
Dunkin'
to do
Donuts commercial where they can pull the goalie and he's off in the corner.
Yeah.
But so Russ, the question is, if you were setting up your Soho Table Hockey and you had the Islanders and the Penguins and you're Barry Trotz, who are you putting in the goalie slot if you are the Islanders, and why?
Well, I mean, all right. First thing is, in my neighborhood, we did pull the guy off for a penalty.
We did
secondly, Secondly, at this point, he has no choice but to stick with Sorokin. But if Sorokin fails, Varlamov's not going to be the best guy to come off the bench. And that's the only potential problem here for Trotz. But right now, he has to go Sorokin because he went with him.
Well, is that because Sorokin's playing well, or because the team is playing better in front of him?
I think it's because the team's playing better in front of him. I didn't really have a problem with Varlamov's play. And I like Sorokin a lot, and I don't think he did anything special to really say he's the reason they could go now and beat the Penguins. I just think this was a good game for them and a bad game for the Penguins.
Right. The Penguins had zero high-quality chances.
Yeah.
So, to me, Trotz has now painted himself in the corner. You're right. He won the game. Now you have to go back to the winning goalie. Now, if he spits the bit and you come back to your goalie, you are going to open yourself up for second guessing. But listen, Trotz really doesn't care.
Go back. The Islanders have history. This even go back to their cup years, when to some extent Billy Smith was the playoff goalie, but Chico Resch did get some games.
The first year, and then after that,
the first year. Then
it was Billy Smith throughout.
Wow.
So I don't think listen. The bottom line is this is still a series. This is out of all the series so far for me, and people are going to say, "Oh, that's your Ranger bias," but I'll tell you, this has been the sloppiest of all that I've seen. This is not
your Ranger
good.
Bias.
I don't know, Russ. Do you agree?
It is your Ranger bias. There have been some really good games, very exciting games. I have to disagree.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Let's take a look at some surprises here. For me, the biggest surprise is, and you know what, you really can't say that in a 2-3 matchup. It's hard to be surprised, but the fact that Winnipeg is handling Edmonton so handily, I'm surprised by that. Are you?
Yeah, I am. I'm not surprised that Hellebuck's the reason, because if it was going to happen, it would be Hellebuck being the reason. But I mean, Ehlers wasn't in those first couple games, and they still won. Like, it's just, it really is an amazing thing that's happening with that. It's also amazing that Connor McDavid and Draisaitl don't have a point.
Right.
I was saying on another show, did you ever see a series where like Gretzky and Messier didn't have a point early on in the playoffs? And you would say probably no. I mean, maybe it happened later in Messier's career.
Probably, I would say maybe those the Calgary Wars in the beginning when Otto did a really good job, holding Mess off the board. There might have been one shutout in there. Riggin might have pulled. Was it Riggin back then? Probably.
Could be,
yeah, maybe.
But again, Connor McDavid has not come up as big as you would think he should in the playoffs, regardless of how much other talent he has. There's been less talented teams than his that have, been able to win games. He is not even a point a game in his playoff career, so he's got some things to prove.
All right, what about Tavares? The loss of Tavares on the Maple Leafs, how big of a role is that going to play in that series against the Montreal Canadiens?
I think it does play a role as the series goes on. I mean, Alex Kerfoot is a decent center, but he's not really a fill-in for that. I think that they did rally around him, so that was good, and they got their win. I also think that Montreal could put in Cole Caulfield and Alexander Romanov and stop playing all of these veterans, because I thought that was a mistake anyhow, and that could help level out the series. This is going to be a tough series. I really do think it's going to go 7 anyhow. I really do. You could throw out what the Leafs did in the regular season. Montreal has a different team for the playoffs, and if Price gives them the same kind of goaltending he gave them in the first couple, in the first game, I think you're going to have a tough series.
Talk about a different team in the playoffs than the regular season. You take a look at what the Boston Bruins are doing against the Washington Capitals. It was only a matter of time till they all got healthy. They got their goaltenders back, and they righted the ship. But this Bruins team is, they're going to be a very tough out throughout the entire playoffs. I think right now they look to be one of the best teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, they're a tough out. The top line's still great, but also now Taylor Hall's starting to kick in. Rask is Rask. I mean, he's always got like a 927 save percentage. The haters are just going to be out there for him, but he is a big reason. But I have to say, the biggest reason is when we saw Washington breaking down in the regular season before these playoffs. I don't know anybody that picked them as a result, and they're breaking down in the playoffs too. So that's not helping them.
The other teams that we haven't touched on, Colorado with a 3-0 edge over the St. Louis Blues, the Golden Knights 3-1 over the Wild, and then Carolina 2-1 over the Preds. That's been a pretty good series as well.
Yeah, that one's surprising. Right now, the Hurricanes are at 59 shots to the Predators 41. Like, there's a lot of shots, guys. That's doing my math. That's 100 shots. So, listen, Nashville was the worst team coming into these playoffs as far as the weakest. And they, ever since the OT win, the double OT win, they are playing different hockey. It's like they woke them up. And look, Nedeljkovic is a rookie in this league, and I like him. I've watched him at every level. But, they're starting to jam him. They're starting to shoot high. You never know when a rookie is going to start to have a problem. So somehow if Nashville wins this game, this could be a very surprising series when everybody was counting them out, me included. Avalanche are the Avalanche. No, the Blues aren't beating them.
Right.
They weren't gonna. And same with Vegas.
Right. And whoever gets out of this Carolina, Nashville, I don't think stands a chance against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is just that each game they look to be getting a little more and more confident as they go. With every successive shift, they're actually, I think they had their one wake-up call in this series, and, I'd be hard-pressed if they have another stinker in them.
I mean, they could lose a game or two if it's Carolina, But again, I don't see them losing either. I don't. I still think, of all the teams, I still think Colorado's the best team right now. Tampa's great, but I think Colorado's got as much depth as they do.
It's going to be fun. We won't be able to talk about it next week, so because it's Memorial Day, but the week after, we might already be in the second round. So we'll know a lot more then. All right, Russ, thanks so much. Russ Cohen here each and every week with the Soho Table Hockey Report. We're going to take a break, and then on the other side, we're going to make 15,000 plus that are on their way to Madison Square Garden to see the Knicks take on the Atlanta Hawks in the playoffs. That sounds really good to say.
It's looking forward to getting home and watching that game.
Yeah, that should be fun, and we'll talk about it right after this. If you're a company looking to increase your visibility, to make sure your promotional materials get packaged in the most attractive way and distributed most efficiently, then you need to call in PIMS. Whether you're launching a new product and need to assemble customized influencer packages, or looking for a more efficient way to manage your inventory and collateral, PIMS involvement helps maximize the impact of your brand's performance. For more than 30 years, PIMS has been helping companies get their message out to the right people, offering personalized distribution services and full-scale inventory management solutions. PIMS works its magic on 3 continents, backed by 350,000 square feet of warehouse space. If you're looking for experience, PIMS is it. They've shipped more than 13 million packages and elevated more than 8,000 brands. Want to know more? Check them out on the web, PIMSinc.com. That's PIMSINC.com, and read testimonials from their satisfied clients. That's PIMS, the first name in marketing support. And welcome back to Sports Talk New York on the 365 Sportscast Network. It's time for Sunday Papers. We got to get Joe Jackson up. There it is. All right, AJ, I know this is going to bother me. It's going to get me in a bad mood, but go ahead.
Well, this is an A-Rod story. And we know about A-Rod, the entrepreneur, A-Rod post-playing days, A-Rod who is one of the sharks on Shark Tank, A-Rod, who is in a group now, finally buy a team, the Minnesota Timberwolves. That is not the A-Rod story of the week.
Just thank God A-Rod wasn't successful in his bid to the Mets.
The A-Rod story of the week is he's come out with a new line of, ready for this, men's cosmetics. He posted on his Instagram of him posting with this blur stick. I guess it's something you pull out like a chapstick and you cover a zit.
Well, I guess that's for his back acne because of the steroids.
Right. And his quote on this is you company called Hims and Hers. All I know from Hims is I hear their ads incessantly on radio for, Viagra.
AJ has a friend who heard.
No. I hear the ads. I'm not saying I use it. The ads are incessant on this.
I know about him.
And if you need Mark, you can call. They're very confidential. It's for you. No. So what A-Rod says is, working with the Hims and Hers team, I wanted to create a product that solved an issue I faced every day. I realized I was jumping from meeting to meeting. I needed something quick and easy in my routine to conceal blemishes or razor bumps. Well, if you talk about blemishes,
he wanted something quick and easy. He lost that in J-Lo, didn't he?
Start looking, blemishes at his baseball record. So maybe he can use this blur stick to blur what he did with steroids and his Major League record, and maybe blur his way into the Hall of Fame. But all I know is I'm not running out to my local CVS or Walgreens to get an A-Rod blur stick, although some would say this is a direct slap at his ex, J-Lo, who has her own line of cosmetics.
Could be. All right. So now let's talk about something that is cosmetically pleasing, and that is the New York Knicks and 15,000 plus fans at Madison Square Garden. That Mr. Dolan somehow is, I don't know how they're socially distancing. I don't know how they're vaccinated. They're vaccinated, but it's all of a sudden we went from 2,000 fans to 15,000
because the governor listed the restrictions. Yeah. Now they can do it.
All right, Chaim. What's your take on this Knicks versus the Atlanta Hawks playoffs? Knicks the 4 seed. The Knicks have home court advantage. Tell us about it.
I mean, I think the story here isn't even the series. The story here is one of redemption. Not to get too poetic or romanticize this all that much, but I mean, playoffs has been 8 years in the making. Home playoff series has been just that long. And the turnaround from what's essentially an identical to the team to the last place finisher last year is now hosting a first-round playoff matchup. They were a 1-4, no play-in for these guys. That's the story. Now, on the court, obviously, the scorecard reads 3-0 Knicks in terms of the regular season, so that would make them the prohibitive favorite for those that haven't really watched the game. But these games were close, and the last one also, the Knicks were having a lot of trouble defending the John Collins, Trae Young pick and roll until Trae Young got hurt. The Knicks have some matchups that they're going to really have a tough time defending, and Atlanta could exploit. It's going to come down to keep Trae Young off the free throw line and who's knocking down their shots on any given night. I think this is going to be probably the most nip-tuck series in the first round that we might see in the Eastern Conference. I think it's going to be a really good one.
I mean, what people don't realize is that the Hawks had the best record either in the Eastern Conference and the whole NBA since they made Nate McMillan the coach. And this is a team that had 2 seasons. They had the pre-Nate McMillan and the post-Nate McMillan. They are going to be a very tough team. Look, this is where the 15,000 fans in the Garden may come into play with the home court advantage. That you take. I've been in the Garden in the Knicks years in the 90s, and there was nothing scarier than staying in scary at being in Madison Square Garden. The crowd's going crazy, and you can feel the seats shake. That's how active that whole the crowd is. But it's look. I think it's been a good series. I think if we look at what's happened in the past week, there have been some very good games, very good series. The Lakers.
Warriors game. Oh, I'm sorry.
The Lakers Warriors game was a great game to watch. The games have been on the past 2 days. They've been good, good games to watch, good series to watch. Look, I think the Knicks Hawks is a toss-up. I think it could go 6 games. It could go 7 games. It's not going to be a 4-game sweep for either team.
I'm going Knicks in 6.
I think they may have to come home and do it in 7. But
imagine a game 7 for the Knicks at Madison Square Garden.
Chaim, do you have any surprises from what you've seen so far in the first round games of the other games that have been played?
Not in terms of which team is winning. I think a surprise to me is that you got 2 road teams winning their first game out in the West. The Mavericks, the way they handled the Clippers was surprising to me. The Bucks, we know the Heat's a tough outcome playoff time.
Right.
Not really. I'm surprised to see it go to over. Not really, honestly. The surprise to me is 2 road wins in the West, and I guess how easily the Mavs are able to fill up the box score when they start turning it on. Otherwise, no surprises. I think the surprises are to come next couple of nights. And like you said, I think Knicks Hawks is going to be nip tuck. I think it's very well could be a 7-game series.
So, it's so interesting to watch these playoff games because I don't watch regular season because I'm watching hockey now because the Rangers are out.
And I'm the other way around.
Right.
Yeah.
So now, I do like the Nets. I am so stoked to watch the Knicks. And I did watch. This year is the first time I can honestly say that I've watched it. Because, listen, Kayam, you've been on the TT train for probably the duration since you've been here. That is the guy you've always wanted. It's the guy you said, and this guy has to get Coach of the Year. There's no question.
He didn't, though. He didn't. The Phoenix coach got Coach of the Year.
He should have gotten Coach of the Year.
I think it was close because Phoenix was a surprise team. They were good, but nobody.
But Phoenix has been good. The Knicks have never been good.
Let's talk Nets for a second, though, because let's get this involved. We talked about Thibodeau and what great coach he was for the Knicks and turned them around.
Yeah.
At what point is the Nets material that good that it doesn't matter who their coach is, or will there be a point when you have a problem with Steve Nash being a rookie coach in the playoffs?
So I think Steve Nash at this point kind of has a little bit of a part, and I think he has immunity to an extent because, frankly, his team has played together, all of 5 times, and that's not the Steve Nash experiment. That's the Brooklyn Net experiment. They went ahead and they got a Kyrie Irving who's going to play when he feels like, and, if he's having a bad day, he's the sensitive type who if he doesn't feel like it, he's out. And I know it runs a lot much deeper than that, and according to Kyrie, we're going to understand that KD and Kyrie move in about 10, 15 years from now. It's bigger than basketball or something. But Steve Nash is not the guy who's decided, hey, this is the chemistry. He's the guy who's he needs to manage egos more so than anything else. If the Nets don't make the run, I don't think anybody's going to go, Steve Nash blew it, unless Steve Nash actually blows it in a big moment. I think his job was getting them here, managing them here, and handling the personalities. And James Harden is happily embraced his role as a distributor. Kyrie Irving is very happy to be the creative scorer. He's managed his roster really well in terms of, how this season's going to go. I think it's finals for bust for the Nets. Right. Unless he blows it for them, I think Steve Nash is immune.
One other coach to talk about before we let you go, and that is the pressure on Doc Rivers in Philadelphia. It's finals or bust for the Nets. It's also finals or bust for the Sixers. How much of a hot seat is Doc Rivers on if he doesn't get the Sixers to the finals?
I think that depends a lot on that matchup. I think it's going to come down to as most people do. I think it's going to come down to Sixers Nets in the Eastern Conference Finals. And if that series is a competitive one and they're just overmatched by the super, but you face the dream team.
3. Yeah.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do. I'm not sure Doc Rivers takes the heat. If they're completely overmatched, if there's infighting, if Ben Simmons looks like he doesn't belong, if the Sixers kind of pull what the Sixers have pulled in the past and infighting, no team chemistry, this is an internal issue, then Doc Rivers is on the hot seat yet again. But this is a guy who's done really Joel Embiid. As much as we talk about Julius Randle, Joel Embiid took a quantum leap this year. The team has kind of they've kind of gotten a new identity in terms of who they are on offense, where the focal point is, how they're going to work. Tobias Harris still one of the most underrated players in the NBA. They got a really good roster. The Nets have the dream team. So I think it depends to a large degree in how they perform, how they show out. And if they fail to make it to the NBA Finals, is it an internal issue? And how hard do they go down fighting?
All right, Chaim, we'll speak to you in 2 weeks when we'll be into the second round of the NBA playoffs. Chaim Tower here each and every week with the NBA Report. We'll take a quick break. On the other side, we'll wrap up with the NFL Report.
Decolator Cohen and DePrisco, LLP, is pleased to introduce their website, policeofficersrighttosue.com, as an educational and informative site designed to instruct members of the law enforcement community of their civil rights in line-of-duty accidents. Many law enforcement members are not aware of their rights to sue and fail to bring lawsuits within a specific time frame, thereby forfeiting their ability to seek rightful compensation against those parties that cause officers to be injured. PoliceofficersRightToSue.com provides successful past results of line-of-duty lawsuits. These examples range from officers being provided with inadequate equipment, RMP accidents, slip and falls, and station house mishaps. If any law enforcement member has a question regarding a potential lawsuit, they can contact DCD at policeofficersrighttosue.com or at 1-800-901-1LAW. That's police officers.
Joining us now is a man who's 64 years ago.
901-1LAW.
And welcome back to Sports Talk New York on the 365 Sportscast Network. It's time now for the Capcom NFL Report with Jay Retcher. Even though it is spring, it feels like it's summer already. Before you know it, it will be here. It's time to get your windows and doors ready to let the fresh air in, the bugs out with a Clearview retractable screen. The Clearview retractable screen system comes standard with a lifetime warranty and a patented speed reducer so it won't snap back. You get the luxury of a screen door in a sleek low-profile design without the hassle of a bulky storm door or sliding screen door. Call 631-440-1100 for a free estimate at 631-440-1100 or visit them on the web at clearviewlongisland.com. Very interesting here in New York. And
it's a picture, but
it is interesting is that, the new Jets quarterback, Zach Wilson, basically took it looked like his entire offensive line to the Islander game. Interesting in two respects.
Mekhi Becton was not there.
No, that's true. But interesting, that they were able to get 9 or 10 games to the Coliseum when tickets were supposed to be limited, but they ended up with 10.
Look, they didn't sit in the Islanders penalty box. That would have been
filled. But what do you make of it? I know that you saw Brady do similar when he got there, his workouts and team bonding. What do you make of it? A rookie, taking the team to an Islander game.
I love it, man. I love the cross team things that happen in the city. Where I've been on hand before when Steven Stamkos was taking batting practice before a Rays game before down here in Tampa. So I always think stuff like that is really, really cool. And hey, man, you're going to need as many opportunities to bond and kind of grow together. And I'm all for it, man. I think it's a step in the right direction for the young man in this line.
It's been kind of quiet in football over the last couple of days. What do you got for us? I mean, I'm leaving it up to you. We got like a minute and a half.
Tim Tebow.
There is always Tim Tebow, right? And you know what? Here's the ironic part of this. This is the most Tim Tebow story ever. Because guess what? If Tim Tebow was playing for the Rumble Ponies right now, he'd be on the New York Mets.
Right.
Because they ran out of guys. He would have gotten
They'd have to bring him up.
This is the ultimate Tim Tebow story. You got about a minute. What do you want to talk about, Jay?
It's all about timing in life, isn't it, fellas? That's a great example. Right. Yeah, I know everybody's freaking out, down here, obviously in Tampa, a lot of people talking about the Tebow story too. And, do I think he's going to make the team? I don't think so. But listen, they got the jerseys selling already. If you go on the website, his jersey's ahead of Trevor Lawrence.
No.
If anything, if you go on the website, number one jersey you can buy is Tebow. But hey, when you think about it too, guys, I mean, you take some of the heat off of Trevor Lawrence, less eyes talking about him. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to make some cash off it. Listen, those guys, when you have a 90-man roster before you limit it down, those last 5, 6, 7, or 8 guys are somebody's brother, some punter from Australia. There's everybody knows why they're doing it. It's no surprise. I don't think he'll make the 53, but it's definitely something we'll have to keep an eye out.
All right, Jay, we will speak to you in 2 weeks. At that time, I believe that Tim Tebow will be trying out for the USA Olympic hockey team, and we'll take it.
He might make it.
Curling.
All right, boys.
All right, Jay Recchi each and every week with the Capcom Nfl Report. We'll take. We're going to leave.
We're going to leave.
We're going to take a 1-week vacation. We won't be here for Memorial Day. Hope you have a great.
We'll have
holiday.
a show. We'll get a show.
Right,
one of our best.
And there'll be a best of. And keep it tuned right here for BT Talks Baseball coming up next.